It seems like every time you open a social media app these days, there is just a new, slightly bizarre beauty trend taking over your feed.
Oh, for sure. It never ends.
Right. But recently, one has been making headlines that genuinely made me do a double take. Like, it has been endorsed by massive celebrities. We're talking Kim Kardashian, Hailey Bieber,
Yeah, it's everywhere.
and it has the most eye-catching, honestly somewhat shocking name. They call it the salmon sperm facial.
It definitely stops you mid-scroll, right?
Completely.
I mean, the aesthetic industry has always had this flair for the dramatic, and slapping a name like that on a treatment really pushes the envelope of, what people are willing to consider just for the sake of skin rejuvenation.
It really does. But to figure out how clinics legally and ethically get away with offering this, we had to dig through a genuinely bizarre paper trail.
Yeah, we didn't just look at the glossy marketing brochures for this deep dive.
No, not at all. We are looking at actual patient consent forms from high-end aesthetic clinics, ranging from, Harley Street in London all the way to New York City.
And cross-referencing those with rigorous EU and FDA regulatory guidelines?
Exactly. Plus, Islamic thought was on halal skincare, and even diving into these heavy philosophical papers from medical ethics journals.
It's quite the stack of sources.
It is. And our mission today is to figure out how ethical aesthetic clinics cut through this wild social media hype to construct, transparent, rigorous, informed consent documentation regarding the animal origin and the safety evidence of these treatments.
Because when you're dealing with animal-derived medical products, I mean, the standard for informed consent just has to be absolute.
Right.
A practitioner cannot just gloss over what is floating inside that syringe, no matter how trendy the procedure has become on TikTok.
Okay, let's unpack this, because signing a clinic consent form for this treatment is a bit like agreeing to the terms and conditions of a software update.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Except in this case, the software is quite literally fish DNA, and the hardware is your face.
Yeah, exactly.
You really need to know what you are agreeing to before you let someone rewrite your cellular code. So before a clinic asks a patient to sign anything, they have to demystify the science.
Right, they have to explain what it actually is.
So what actually is a salmon sperm facial, medically speaking? I understand rubbing a topical cream on your face, but how does injecting literal fish material actually trick human skin into looking younger?
Well, medically speaking, we are talking about a category of injectables called polynucleotides.
Okay.
Sometimes you will see them referred to on the clinical paperwork as PDRN, which stands for polydeoxyribonucleotide.
That's a mouthful.
It is, yeah. But what these actually are at a molecular level are highly purified DNA fragments.
Just fragments of DNA.
Exactly. And they're typically extracted from the milt, which is the seminal fluid of salmonids.
Okay, so the viral name isn't a total fabrication?
No, it's not. I mean, we're talking about specific species like the chum salmon, scientifically known as Oncorhynchus or sometimes trout. Trout is actually the biological source used in major products like Plynest.
But it sounds like a massive oversimplification of what is actually happening in the clinic.
Oh, it is a profound oversimplification. I mean, a patient is not having raw biological material injected into their skin.
Thank goodness.
Right. These polynucleotides act as biostimulators.
Okay, so how is that different from, say, traditional filler?
Well, a traditional dermal filler is usually a hyaluronic acid gel that just temporarily plumps up the physical space under your skin.
It just sits there, basically.
Exactly. But polynucleotides work by communicating directly with your cells. When they're injected into the dermis, these DNA fragments actually bind to specific receptors on your human cells.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they send a signal that promotes rapid tissue regeneration, significantly boosts the production of collagen and elastin, and, increases overall hydration.
So they're repairing the scaffolding of your skin architecture at a fundamental cellular level.
Precisely.
I mean, I see the appeal of the results, for sure. But I need to push back on the safety aspect right out of the gate.
Sure.
If this product is fundamentally derived from fish, shouldn't people be absolutely terrified of allergic reactions?
It's a very common question, yeah.
Because I was looking through the source material, specifically a very detailed scientific paper outlining the biochemical risks, and I saw this word, parvalbumin, constantly popping up in the allergy warnings.
Yes, parvalbumin.
If someone is highly allergic to fish, isn't injecting fish DNA directly into their facial tissue Just a recipe for an absolute medical disaster.
Well, that gets to the very heart of the manufacturing process and why, medical grade oversight is non-negotiable here.
Right.
To understand the risk, we have to understand what parvalbumin actually is. It is a specific low molecular weight calcium binding protein found in the muscle tissue of fish. Think of it like a biological tripwire. For humans with a seafood allergy, parvalbumin is the primary trigger. The research states it's responsible for over 95% of fish-induced food allergies.
Wow, 95%.
Yeah. When the human immune system detects that specific protein, it sounds the alarm, leading to anaphylaxis or, severe allergic reactions.
So how do you inject something extracted from a salmon without triggering that exact tripwire?
Well, manufacturers neutralize that threat through a highly complex patented method called high purification technology, or HPT.
HPT, okay.
You can think of HPT like a microscopic biochemical sieve combined with an intense centrifuge.
Sounds intense.
It is. This process washes the biological material repeatedly at incredibly high temperatures and specific chemical gradients.
Oh, so they really break it down.
Exactly. It essentially strips away all the surrounding proteins, including those dangerous parvalbumin allergens, as well as any other immunogenic lipids or cellular debris. What survives this intense washing process is just the pure instruction manual, basically. A highly purified, sterile, and incredibly biocompatible DNA gel.
Because the proteins are completely removed.
Right. So the biological tripwire that triggers an allergic response is essentially eliminated.
Yeah, it makes sense biochemically. But, and this is a massive detail for you to keep in mind if you are considering this treatment, despite this intense high-tech purification process, transparent clinic consent forms still red flag the allergy risk.
Oh, absolutely they do.
Yeah, I pulled the actual informed consent documents from highly reputable places like Rejuva London and Eternal Aesthetics. They don't just rely on the science of the HPT process and call it a day.
No, they can't.
They explicitly list severe fish or seafood allergies as a strict contraindication. They force the patient to disclose their medical history in writing.
Which is the defining hallmark of ethical aesthetic practice. Even if the purification makes the risk of a reaction vanishingly small, the origin of the raw material is still fish. If you spend enough time looking at the discourse online, you will inevitably find horror stories of, polynucleotides gone wrong. You see photos of severe swelling or nodules.
Yeah, I've seen some of those videos.
But when clinical dermatologists dig into the data, those adverse events rarely involve an allergic reaction to the purified product itself.
What are they reacting to then?
They almost always trace back to an undeclared allergy where a patient hid their medical history, or a non-medical practitioner using terrible injection technique and placing the product at the wrong depth.
Yikes.
Or worse, clinics buying cheap, counterfeit products that never went through that rigorous high purification technology.
Oh, that is scary.
Yeah. When the authentic product is administered correctly by a medical professional, the safety profile is genuinely excellent, but that safety relies entirely on honest, two-way informed consent.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because once a clinic establishes the physical safety of injecting highly purified fish DNA, the animal origin introduces a deeply personal, entirely different layer to the consent process.
It definitely does.
We are moving from cellular biology into dietary ethics and profound religious beliefs. Like, if a clinic hands you a form that just says this is a rejuvenating skin booster, they are bypassing a massive ethical minefield for the patient.
Yeah, that lack of transparency totally robs the patient of their autonomy.
Exactly.
For millions of people, what they allow into their bodies or what they use to heal themselves is governed by deeply held philosophical rules or ancient spiritual laws.
For starters, the clinic documentation must explicitly state that these treatments are fundamentally not suitable for vegans or strict vegetarians.
Right.
It truly does not matter how purified the DNA is or that it no longer resembles the animal. The raw material was harvested from a living creature.
Yep, it's an animal product at the end of the day.
But taking that a step further, what about religious dietary laws? Like, if you observe strict religious rules regarding purity and consumption, can you ethically consent to a salmon sperm facial?
Well, let's look at the Islamic perspective found in our stack of sources.
Let's do it.
According to guidance provided by ethical clinics like BushTOX, which caters to a diverse demographic, and formal rulings from Islamic knowledge hubs like Seeker's Guidance, polynucleotides are actually considered halal.
Which surprised me at first glance, honestly, considering the origin.
Yeah, the reasoning behind that ruling is a really fascinating blend of theology and modern biochemistry.
How so?
Well, there are two main factors religious scholars consider here. First, in foundational Islamic dietary law, seafood, which explicitly includes fish, is generally considered halal and permissible to consume.
Right, okay.
But the second, much more complex factor is the concept of istihala.
I saw that term in the fatwas.
Yeah.
It translates roughly to chemical transformation, right?
Exactly. Istihala refers to a process where an impure substance undergoes such a radical chemical transformation that its fundamental nature is changed.
Got it.
Think of the ancient example of wine turning into vinegar. The alcohol, which is forbidden, transforms naturally into a completely different substance, making the vinegar permissible.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah, so religious scholars and muftis evaluate the high purification technology used to create polynucleotides through this exact lens.
Oh, I see.
Because the purification is so absolute, isolating just the microscopic DNA fragments and leaving absolutely zero traces of the original impure materials or proteins behind, the product is deemed to have undergone istihala.
Wow.
The original biological substance is so thoroughly transformed at a molecular level that it changes the religious ruling of the material. It becomes permissible or pure for use in cosmetic skincare and medicine.
That is such a vivid intersection of ancient religious jurisprudence and cutting-edge biotech.
It really is.
But consider the flip side, which we found in the Jewish perspective mentioned by the Melior Clinic source. They highlight that polynucleotide products are absolutely not certified kosher.
Right, that's an important distinction.
Even though the biological origin is fish, and many types of fish with fins and scales are kosher, the final medical product does not meet the standard.
Because the standard for kosher certification extends far beyond just the species of the animal.
Precisely. The manufacturing, the extraction of the milt, and that intense purification process do not undergo kosher supervision or certification by rabbinic authorities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the supply chain isn't monitored for cross-contamination with non-kosher substances in the laboratory. So for a patient adhering strictly to kosher laws, injecting this product might be a hard line they simply cannot cross, regardless of how purified the DNA is.
Which brings us right back to the monumental importance of the physical consent form.
Yes.
An ethical aesthetic practitioner doesn't make these complex spiritual or philosophical decisions on behalf of their patient.
No, they can't. The consent form essentially acts as a highly specific spiritual nutrition label.
I like that phrase.
The hallmark of an ethical clinic's paperwork isn't just a blanket reassuring statement saying this procedure is safe. It provides the exact origin detail.
It has to lay it all out.
Exactly. It states clearly this biostimulator is derived from the reproductive fluids of trout or salmon. It places that reality in black and white so that you, the patient, can weigh the science against your own personal, ethical, and spiritual values.
Because the clinic provides the unvarnished transparency and you provide the informed consent.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to realize the staggering administrative weight behind that single piece of paper.
Oh man, the paperwork.
Right. The patient only ever sees a one-page consent form. Maybe it has a few paragraphs outlining the risks, a brief mention of the salmon origin, and a signature line at the bottom.
For standard stuff.
But for a clinic to legally offer that form to you in the first place, there is a massive, practically invisible regulatory framework operating behind the scenes.
It is so easy to look at a viral 15-second TikTok video of a celebrity getting this facial and completely forget that polynucleotides are actually classified as Class 3 medical devices.
Yes. Under the EU Medical Device Regulation, specifically Rule 18, devices utilizing animal tissues or derivatives are automatically classified as Class 3.
Which means what? Exactly.
That is the absolute highest risk level possible for a medical device. It's in the same regulatory category as a pacemaker or a heart valve.
Wow, a heart valve. That's wild.
Yeah, and the FDA in the United States has similarly stringent, exhaustive guidelines specifically designed for medical devices containing animal-derived materials.
So they're not messing around.
Not at all. Manufacturers can't just buy a shipment of chum salmon at a commercial fish market, extract the DNA in a lab, and ship it to a dermatologist.
But honestly, if I'm the patient sitting in the esthetician's chair with, numbing cream smeared on my face, why do I care about EU Rule 18? Like, how does that international bureaucracy actually protect me when I'm just trying to get glowing skin?
Well, you might never read the international regulations, but the confidence you feel when signing that clinic consent form is entirely backed by them.
Okay, fair.
The regulatory bodies require manufacturers to go through something called the TSE consultation process. TSE stands for Transmissible Spongiform Encephalopathy.
Which is a family of fatal diseases that affect the brain and nervous system, right? Like mad cow disease.
Exactly.
So,
Now, while fish do not carry mad cow disease, the overarching regulations for any animal-derived medical device require universal compliance to prevent cross-species contamination.
so they just apply the strictest rules across the board.
Precisely. To comply with global safety standards, specifically ISO 22442, manufacturers must painstakingly document the entire life cycle of the animal.
The entire life cycle.
Yep. They must prove the specific animal species used. They must document the exact age of the animal at the time of slaughter, the specific tissues harvested, the country of origin, and even provide records of the ongoing health monitoring of the aquatic population the fish came from.
That is incredibly detailed. So when the clinic's form casually mentions highly purified trout DNA, that single, simple phrase is carrying the weight of international safety laws, veterinary health inspections, and endless corporate audits.
Yes. The practitioner holding the syringe relies entirely on those ISO documents to know the product won't harm you.
Right.
The simple checkbox on the clinic's form, the one asking you to confirm you understand the origin and the risks, is the final patient-facing distillation of all that global regulatory burden.
That's a great way to put it.
By the time you read the word salmon, a small army of scientists, auditors, and regulators have already signed off on it.
Okay, we have thoroughly explored how humans give informed consent to receiving animal-derived products. We've talked about the cellular safety, the religious implications, the international regulations.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. But reading through the medical ethics sources in our stack brought up a philosophical flip side that completely blew my mind.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
Because all this EU and FDA paperwork is obsessively focused on ensuring the human knows exactly what they're consenting to.
Right.
But reading those FDA guidelines made me realize there is one party involved in this transaction who never signed anything, and that's the animal.
Yeah.
Which brings up a massive ethical blind spot regarding the concept of consent for the subjects whose biology we are actually harvesting.
It introduces a deeply complex, often uncomfortable ethical tension. I mean, in the realm of medical research and product development, animals are universally viewed by the legal framework as objects rather than subjects.
I want to bring in this highly intriguing, incredibly provocative piece we found from the Journal of Medical Ethics.
Let's do it.
It was written by Joseph Bernstein, and it's a satirical piece proposing something called the Animal Research Advance Directive.
Such a brilliant concept.
It really is. He was analyzing the growing protests against animal research, and he proposed a theoretical legal release form. In this advance directive, animal rights-conscious patients could explicitly opt out of any medical treatment that was developed, tested, or manufactured using animal research or animal biology.
Which is a brilliant thought experiment because signing that directive would effectively mean refusing almost all of modern medicine.
That's the kicker. If you sign this theoretical consent form upon entering a hospital, you would be legally refusing coronary bypass surgery because the heart-lung machine was developed using dogs.
Wow.
You would have to refuse nearly all modern cancer therapies, entirely reject modern surgical techniques, and decline virtually all pain medicine because every single one of those advancements was studied on rats, pigs, or other animals.
Yeah, it's wild when you list it out like that.
The author was using satire to make a very sharp point about the inescapable reality of human health. Our survival relies almost entirely on animal subjects who cannot consent to being used.
The Frontiers paper in our source stack analyzes this exact tension beautifully.
Yeah.
Because animals fundamentally cannot give informed consent, I mean, they cannot understand the risks, the benefits, or the purpose of a study, their interests are legally and practically subordinated to the interests of science and human society.
Which is a heavy thing to wrap your head around.
It is. We justify the use of their biology, whether it is for a life-saving coronary bypass or a purely cosmetic polynucleotide facial, because our ethical framework prioritizes human welfare and human desires above all else.
Right.
But it forces us to acknowledge that the entire structure of our medical advancement is built on the backs of subjects who had absolutely no choice in the matter.
But here is the wildest caveat I found when digging through the FDA sources.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, the FDA's Center for Veterinary Medicine Guidance, document CVM GFI Tag 282. We just established that animals cannot give consent. But If a clinical trial involves client-owned companion animals, for example, if your pet dog, cat, or horse is entered into a trial for a new veterinary drug, the FDA does mandate strict informed consent forms.
Though naturally, they aren't getting a signature from the golden retriever.
Uh-huh. Right. The consent comes from the human owner.
Exactly.
So, under federal law, we legally require human consent for animals to participate in science, but we cannot mathematically or biologically get consent from them. It just highlights how incredibly human-centric the very concept of consent really is.
It does. And if we synthesize all these layers, an ethical aesthetic clinic's consent form for a salmon sperm facial sits at the very apex of this incredibly complex ethical pyramid.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Think about what is actually happening when a patient is handed that clipboard. The form forces the human patient to actively acknowledge the animal origin of the DNA they are buying.
Right.
It forces them to trust the rigorous invisible human safety testing and international regulatory tracking that product underwent.
All those ISO audits.
Exactly. And finally, it demands ethical transparency, requiring the patient to make a truly informed, conscious choice about integrating animal biology into their own bodies, solely for their own cosmetic benefit.
So what does this all mean? When we peel back the viral TikTok marketing, the flashy influencer posts, and the shocking headlines, we find that truly ethical clinics do not hide behind trendy names.
Yeah, they don't.
They embrace the complex reality of the science. Through transparent, uncompromising documentation, they force a serious conversation about severe fish allergies, the ethics of veganism, the nuances of religious dietary laws, and massive international regulatory frameworks, all before a single injection is ever made.
Which is how it should be.
Exactly. They treat the patient as an intelligent, autonomous participant in their own healthcare.
Because true informed consent was never just about avoiding malpractice lawsuits.
Right. It's bigger than that.
It is about deeply respecting the autonomy of the patient, and by extension, acknowledging the sprawling, complex biological and ethical chain of events that put that specific vial of DNA into the practitioner's hands in the first place.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. As regenerative medicine continues to rapidly advance, we are increasingly looking beyond synthetic chemicals and artificial fillers.
Oh yeah, the field is evolving so fast.
We are now using highly biocompatible animal DNA to actively heal, communicate with, and rejuvenate our own human cells.
It's mind-blowing.
It really is. If our human skin is literally being repaired and structurally regenerated by the genetic building blocks of trout and salmon, are we fundamentally redefining our biological relationship with the natural world?
That's a huge question.
Are we blurring the lines of biology in a way we never have before?
It is a profound philosophical shift. We are moving from applying botanical topical creams on the surface of our skin to literally integrating the foundational building blocks of another species directly into our cellular matrix.
It really is incredible to think about. So, the next time a viral beauty trend catches your eye and you find yourself sitting in a clinic chair with a pen in your hand, take a moment to read the fine print.
Definitely read the fine print.
Think about the incredible, highly regulated, ethically complex journey that little vial took to get there. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.